I'd like to call to order the Tuesday, May 14th, 2019 meeting of the Evanston Preservation Commission. We have a quorum of 7 commissioners, if I can count correctly. First of all, if anyone would like to speak, please sign in. There's a sign-up sheet is on the lectern right now. If you could sign in now, then we wouldn't have to delay when it's your turn to speak. There's been an agenda that's been posted online, and we'll follow the order of the agenda to give everybody the courtesy of being able to have their case presented at the time set forth in the agenda. So the first matter of business was old business, was 2767 Euclid Park. Jeffrey Ross, applicant.
Yeah. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. This is a continuation of a presentation from 2 meetings ago in March. I'm not sure if you were at that one or not.
Could you introduce yourself? I'm sorry.
I'm sorry. I'm Jeff Ross.
Okay.
Okay. This is a proposal with respect to the roof at my property.
Microphone.
How's that?
Great.
Right.
Is that pointer?
Briefly, just to go over the 2 issues. The first is part of the proposal is the use of a synthetic cedar roofing material rather than the current actual cedar, and the reasons for it. And the second proposal, part of the proposal, is to increase the spacing on the between the courses on the eaves on the roof. Let's see how skilled I am with this. Here we go. Let me just say the reasons for the switch to the synthetic cedar material is because the current cedar roofing has deteriorated prematurely because of a number of factors, only some of which can be effectively addressed. And this is a rather expensive process, and the goal here is to use the synthetic material to reproduce the current roof, as reproduces a roof that looks as close as possible to the current one. Let's see. There's the roof. It's the current roof. It's got a number of characteristics to it. One is it's got a wave pattern in it. Second of all, on the eaves, it's got almost a 180-degree half circle, if you will, going around. Current roof is cedar shingles, which have been stained black. I'll show you this where the deterioration is in a moment. The age of the roof depends because it's gotten repaired over the years, but it roughly, some parts are as new as 10 years, other parts are at least 30 or more years, and I've been advised by the 2 contractors working on it that the entire roof needs to be replaced. This picture here shows, of course, the wave pattern, but in particular, it shows the differences on the eaves. The stacked eaves are the current configuration, which both contractors I'm working with recommend against because they deteriorate because of small pieces of wood, water gets in, what have you. The red square in the middle is a superimposed picture of what the new eaves would look like. Okay, so you see there's still a wave pattern there, but the exposure on each course is larger than with the stacked eaves. Here's a couple pictures of the can see the deterioration in the rot. It's not clear to me whether some of these are caused by just deterioration or the squirrels. They seem to like the roof. But these are just examples of the deterioration on the eaves in particular. This next set of pictures, those who were here last time will recall, this is a similar, although not identical roof, done in the synthetic cedar materials. So you see wave patterns and what have you. Now, the eaves aren't quite as pronounced or quite as curved as they are on my house, but you see that this is basically what the new product would look like, and believe me, I think it's hard to tell the difference between the synthetic and the actual cedar. These are other pictures that I presented at the last hearing. Some information on the environmental shingle, that's the type, the contractors, everything you ever wanted to know about cedar and synthetic cedar shingles, but we're afraid to ask. And how do I get it to keep going? Mr. Mangum, am I doing something wrong here?
I believe that's the end of the presentation.
Oh, that's unfortunate. Mr. Rees told me that the additional pictures that I sent in were going to be with the presentation.
Continue to speak. I can see if we can locate additional documents.
He did distribute them to the commission.
He did?
Yeah,
Okay. Well, then you're ahead of me because I don't have the actual pictures. There we go. There we go. Do I have control of that, or do you have control?
Should be able to
okay.
control that, yes.
Good. Good. Thank you. Okay, this is, so one of the things that the commission recommended last time was that we set up a sample on the property, and have them put it in so that both you and I could see what it looked like, and see whether we liked it. As you may recall, that I mentioned last time that although I have great respect for this committee, I report to a much higher authority. I've done it for 39 years, and I've been told that the new roof will look like the old roof or there will not be a new roof. So we've got a section of it done. This is the beginning of the top of the eave. Unfortunately, and frankly, I'm part to blame, we did the setup on a section of the roof that was right next to easy to access to a flat roof. And once we had it in, we realized that what you couldn't do is you couldn't look at it from above, from below. So as you'll see, the way the eave is set up is the spacing starts small and it gets bigger as you come around the curve. So it gets bigger as you go up. You'll see some of that. You can see it here, but you can't really see it from below. But let me go to the next slide because I think it's more helpful. I do have a pointer here. Yes? Do I have a pointer?
The top button is a pointer.
Okay, I give up.
So the right goes forward. The one above that would be the top with the pointer.
There we go. This is the old roof up here. These are just new cedar pieces just to fill in. And the lighter color is the synthetic cedar. It's a lighter color only because that's their darkest color, gray. I would have to do, and I'm willing to do a special order to make it black, like the current roof, but they just don't make it. So here was what they did was they chopped out a piece, put in the lighter colored synthetic cedar, and you can see how it works, or how it looks. Here's a step back, and you can see a little better the eaves. This last course is the largest one, then it gets narrower and narrower, but the picture's taken and I'm standing on a flat roof, so you can't really see it from below, which is obviously the more common view. That's about the best picture I was able to get, like sort of having the camera on the ground or on the surface on the flat roof looking up. And I never claimed to be Alfred Eisenstadt. Another picture, same thing, just at an angle. The synthetic materials here, the old material cedar's there. That's the last picture. So a couple other items, if I might. A couple other questions that were asked last session. One of the questions was, what would be the warranty or warranties that would be offered if it was replaced with a cedar roof? And the short answer is that what I found out was that the cedar shingles are normally warranted for 30 years, but if you stain them, there's no warranty. And so this obviously, to match what's there, would have to be stained black. That staining process can't take place until the cedar sort of weathers, and once it's stained, there's no warranty, which is another reason why I'm not wild about the cedar. There is a 10-year labor warranty from one of the contractors, but that covers everything. One of the other questions I was asked was whether we have any examples of other Preservation Commission type organizations approving the synthetic roofing material. And the short answer is I checked with both contractors, and they just don't have access to that type of information. What they did say is they're not aware of anybody rejecting it, but they don't have any more access than anybody else does. One other point, just for clarification, on the eaves, on the courses, there's basically two options. Well, there's three options, with the first and the one that's readily rejected is the current one with the stacked eaves because of the deterioration. Both contractors recommend against that, and they don't want to do it with a synthetic material because they've never done it that way before, and I've told them I don't particularly want to be the guinea pig. The other options are on the rolled eaves, as it's called. You can either go with 8 courses or 15 courses. The sample is 8 courses. If that's an issue for some reason, you can do more courses. After all, it's only money. Okay? That's about it.
Questions from the commission? No questions? Would anybody like to make a motion?
I just like to say, Can I say, okay, so I did want everyone to hear this. I did pull the landmark designation from the city of Evanston. This is a landmark building, and it does say that the prominent features of this house, built in 1925, are the thatched wavy roof, which is wood shingles, and that it is the criteria for which it became a landmark was that it was exhibited an unusual, distinctive, or eccentric design or construction technique, which contributes to the architectural interest of its environs as an accent or counterpoint. So I would just say that that just based on the standards, it is, after all, a landmark, and it has an unusual roof. We don't find many of these roofs on any. I don't know if there are any. There may be some other in Evanston, but I would say that according to the standards, basically, I think 5. The distinctive stylistic features, materials, finishes, examples of skilled craftsmanship, or examples of distinctive construction techniques that characterize a property, structure, site, or object shall be treated with sensitivity. And I would just say that I just don't think that replacing this roof with this synthetic material meets that standard. Or standard 6, the deteriorated architectural feature shall be repaired rather than replaced wherever possible. And I have gone by the house. It's a wonderful house. I really do understand the problems because the roof is in disrepair. And I think there has been deferred maintenance as well. And I understand that it is a big undertaking. But unfortunately, I think that it does just not meet these standards, that to replace it with a synthetic material, which will really never resemble this roof.
Did you, when you went by the house, could you see the section that it was replaced?
No. I think it's in the back. It's not from the public way.
I was told to put it in a non.
I understand. But you can see some of the images, the rolled roof, which is so unique, and it is made up of a number of shingles as it rolls around the soffitted edge. That is not really reproducible. So,
Are there other commission members that?
Just a couple points of clarification on what your plan would be using the synthetic. So you said that the sample was made with the darkest kind of gray color that they make as a standard color, but they'd be doing a custom
Yes.
black for you to do
Yes,
it in the
they,
synthetic? Okay.
it's about 9 or 10 grand extra. They do a custom run black. Here's what the color is. This is a synthetic slate. But that's the color. The lighter color you saw in the picture is that.
And they, with the rolled edge, I mean, I think I agree with Julie that kind of stacked appearance at the eave is very critical. Did they think is this kind of as close as they can make it work with the synthetic, or did they think they could crowd them even closer together and get closer to the original detail of that stacked appearance?
Well, this is, if I might, this is the rolled eave with 8 courses. Okay, they're also offering to do it in 15 courses. Okay, which would be, roughly double that. They haven't even given me a bid for the stacked eaves because they've never done that. And in terms of the cedar, they're not recommending it because of the lack of durability, for lack of a better term. So, I mean, I can ask them to do the to give me an estimate for the, I'll call it stacked eaves, if you will. At some point, if this gets to be what I refer to as OPM,
Speak into the microphone.
okay, you know what OPM is? Other people's money, okay? The course, with the synthetic material is much more expensive than the wood. The synthetic material, using 8 courses on the eave, is roughly the same as the cedar. If you go to 16 courses, it's an extra $78,000 or 15. Okay. If you go to the stacked, it's going to be that much more. You know, in a perfect world, you would do it identically, but the costs, you know, and that's just the additional cost. That's not the, I think I shared with this commission the last time what the basic cost for the roof repair was. You know, in a perfect world, the cedar would last more. It's supposed to, unstained, it's supposed to last for, I think it's like a 30-year warranty. But with the stain and with the cuts, you lose the warranty. Not trying to debate the technicalities here, but there's I did take a look at the what is it? The Department of the Interior has a set of preservation guidelines that are incorporated into the Evanston guidelines, and there's a section, believe it or not, on roofs, the standard guidelines. And
Could you speak into the reason is they're recording the presentation.
Under roofs, this is on page 100 of these guidelines, I don't have a number, says the recommended approach is replacing in kind an entire roof covering or feature that is too deteriorated to repair if the overall form and detailing are still evident, using the physical evidence as a model to reproduce the features, or when the replacement can be based on historic documentation. Right? Examples of such a feature could include a large section of roofing, a dormer, or a chimney. If using the same kind of material is not feasible, then a compatible substitute material may be considered. And I would suggest that the current material is not feasible at the cost and of the cost of the replacement, given what's happened.
Okay. All right. Why don't we see if, do you want to be seated? And then we'll see if anybody in the general public wishes to talk. Thanks. Is there anybody who is here to speak on this project? No, okay. I guess one question I have for the commission is whether we feel that we understand well enough what the completed roof will look like. I mean, in terms of the stacking, and I hear the applicant's arguments that the cost may just be prohibitive, but I guess I'd at least like to understand, if we're going to approve compromises, I'd at least like to feel that we understood what the roof is going to
I
look
thought
like.
he said the synthetic roof costs more than the synthetic one is more expensive than the steel
Right, I
one.
think the cost issues come in the additional layering and stacking, which evidently add a great deal to the cost.
That was with the synthetic material. When there was more layering, that was even more expensive to try to reproduce the wood. So I have a suggestion. I don't know in terms of how people are thinking about this, but it seems that because I think this is would be a significant alteration, and if there is a mock-up that's on site, and I don't know if this is possible or if that you would actually see the replacement next to the existing, and I really don't think you can, I mean, you can kind of tell, at least I could tell from the pictures, but since it's on the roof, why wouldn't, if preservation commissioners want to see that, is that possible to evaluate it? I think it's hard to evaluate this way,
You're all more than welcome.
but so I don't know, but, so that's one thing. And then I have a question for the commissioners. So for a replacement of a wood shingled roof, because of the problem with the warranty when it's stained, which I didn't even, when I went by it, I didn't notice, but it is stained black. Is that what it's black? So, which is like a no, you never really stain shingle roof. So I guess the question is, this is just a possibility. If it was a wood shingle roof replacement without the staining, how, I just was imposing this to the commissioners in terms of what they think about that.
I think the question comes down to whether it's the color or whether it's the material, and that we're the most comfortable with, because obviously the color can be a match. I'm not particularly comfortable with the material. I wish I had a sample of it to see, but, in terms of, wood cedar shake, while the color may not be there, certainly the textural elements and of the appearance are going to match. So,
I have a sample.
Okay, why don't you bring it up?
yeah, if you could bring it up.
Yeah, sure.
I'd like to just say that I had noted at the last discussion in March that I didn't feel that the curved eave design met the standard 6 and 5, which I know Commissioner Hacker has stated tonight. I think that that still is the case. I think the 15 courses is slightly better in the sense that it looks a little bit more like a replication of the stacked, but I think as the mock-up stands with the 8 courses, I do not think that that accurately represents the landmark historic look of the roof.
Would there be other people who'd be interested in seeing the mock-up and trying to make that decision? I think it is hard to tell from the pictures.
I would be interested in seeing a 15-course mock-up. I don't think that, in my view of the 8, even in the pictures, I don't think it has the same rhythm and the same distinctive characteristics of the stack bond of the cedar. So I would consider looking at a 15-course and then reevaluating, or looking at a stacked cedar.
Is it feasible for them to do the mock-up of the 15? I'm sorry, why don't you come back up so we can...
Is it feasible? Yes, it's just OPM.
Yeah. Could you state, just for clarity, so the second choice would be the 15 stack.
Yes.
Was there a bid for the price
Yes.
difference?
The the pricing for the initial cedar with the stacking, which they don't recommend, the total price was $244,000 plus. Okay.
For the replacement as a wood shingle roof without the staining, what was that?
Well, that was the...
The replacement as a wood shingled
That's
roof.
what he just read.
Is that what,
The
is that?
replacing the current roof with cedar shingles with the
Did you say
the
that?
stacked,
Right.
you know, the price of that was the 244 plus staining, which is, you know, another.
Yeah, so 245.
Okay, and so then for the synthetic material with the 8 stacking,
The synthetic material with 8 courses, because I didn't get a bid for the synthetic material with the cedar, because I've never done it before, with a synthetic cedar. The synthetic material, synthetic cedar with 8 courses added $52,000 plus change.
so I'm sorry, so it's 296 or?
Well, so it's 244 plus 52, whatever.
Okay. And then do you have a price for the synthetic with the, was it 15?
Right. The original plus 78. and
So
change.
296 plus 78 or?
No,
or 244.
244 plus 78.
So it's about a $26,000 difference, it sounds like.
Right.
But I have a question. So when I looked at the roof, it seemed like there was a lot of maintenance issues. There was moss growing on the roof, which implies that it's, and that was on the north facade, which gets probably wet. There were trees that were blocking sunlight along that facade. And so a lot of this roof had not really been maintained. And there were areas that had been replaced. So I think it's a little difficult to sort of understand the problem because it seems like it has been a long time problem that where the roof really hasn't been properly maintained. Just little spot, you've replaced areas, but not, who knows what the underlayment for the roof looks like. So it's hard to say that all of this just happened. Obviously, it didn't happen overnight. It's, when moss starts growing, it's just wet. And it wasn't at the eaves. So I just would like to say to everyone, it's probably not a sudden problem where this roof. So it seems like the roof has to probably be replaced because it's probably really wet and not on just the eaves, but you can see the moss growing on the north side. So if you take that into account in terms of what may have to be done, so.
Well, in that regard, I'll just suggest that I think I provided this timeline before. We purchased it in 1997. In 1996, because we lived nearby, they did an extensive amount of work on the roof, either extensive repairs or total replacement. I've looked unsuccessfully to try and find information or records about that. But since we purchased it in 1997, I've spent over $101,000. So I spent $100,000 in repairs. I certainly will agree that the roof needs work.
All right. If it would be, it's helpful to have the cost figures. It's something we have to keep in mind. But it sounds like if it's okay with you, that the best thing would be for those who wish to come see the mock-up and then just try to see if they can get comfortable with the alternative you want.
Whatever arrangements anybody wants,
Okay.
including just dropping over.
Well, we'll arrange it with, probably Carlos or Scott will arrange it so we can not just drop over. But yeah, we appreciate the cost issues, but we just, I think, have to weigh it carefully. It is it's an especially beautiful house with an incredibly distinctive roof, and we just want to make sure we're not making the wrong decision, even though.
That makes two of us.
Right. Okay. Thank you. So I guess, would it be acceptable then to you if we continue to next month with the idea of then having a final decision at that time.
Yeah, if we could make a final decision at that time, because the person to whom I report has advised me that this process is, well, she started to refer to me as diddler on the roof. Okay.
It's hard. Could we have a motion to continue?
I move that we continue the application for 2767 Euclid Park Place to the June 11th, 2019 meeting.
Second. All in favor, say aye. Any opposed? Okay, thank you. Okay, so the other order of old business was 1032 Forest. The applicants requested that this item be continued to the June 11th meeting. Could we have a motion to do so?
I move we continue the case at 1032 Forest Avenue to the June 11th, 2019 meeting.
Second.
All in favor? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Opposed? No. Okay. We're going to do the new business in order, but I know a lot of people have indicated that they're here to speak about I guess it's the last item of new business, 2390 Orrington. The project will go over in its order from a preservation perspective. I think so people aren't disappointed, though. This commission is not given any, we're not a commission that has any kind of general approval power over whether this project gets built or not. Under the ordinance, we're restricted to reviewing, thank you, sir, preservation issues only, and only reviewing those in accordance with the Preservation Code. The Preservation Code is not really, it doesn't expressly cover trees. There is a separate tree ordinance that the city will be examining, and certainly, and I think the subdivision itself, which is really, I guess, more of an agreement between the city and the applicant, has provisions about trees that the city law department will be examining. But just, so when we get to the matter, so you're not disappointed, I mean, we don't have any kind of general power or authority to approve or disapprove this project. We're allowed only to review compliance with the preservation ordinance, and we have to stick to the ordinance. And so to the extent there are other issues that the city can consider, we have a limited mission and limited rights, and we're not really allowed to consider those. Is there anything else you wanted to?
Yes, Mr. Chairman, if I could add to that a little bit. So the city does recognize the great value of trees with the city and the many associated benefits with trees, including air quality, stormwater, reduction of soil erosion, as a noise buffer, habitat for wildlife, shading, windbreak, and many other benefits. But as was noted, the city does have a tree preservation ordinance contained within Title VII of the city code. That's 7-8-8. And the law department has determined that's not within the purview of the Preservation Commission, which rules are in Title II. However, the Preservation Commission will be considering a referral from Alderman Fisk to look at creating some language within the preservation ordinance to recognize heritage trees. So that referral has been made by Alderman Fisk, and we anticipate that will be on the next Preservation Commission agenda in June. So thank you, Chair, for just clarifying this, just so if anyone wants clarification. I know there's still several items before we get to this.
Okay.
Thank you.
All right. The first item of new business is 1629, 1631 Hinman Avenue. I'm sorry, we'll speak to the, it just wouldn't be courteous to all the people that are in front of it in the queue to defer the.
Do I hear you correctly, that any discussion of trees is irrelevant? That what I'm hearing?
I think what we can tell you is that we don't have jurisdiction over the tree ordinance. We're just a preservation commission. I think otherwise, that's all we really have the right to say.
What about section 2-8-9, section B, number 9, and land masses?
Okay, again, we will come back to this agenda item in its proper order, and there will be an opportunity for people to discuss the preservation ordinance, and I'm sure there will be discussion. But again, it just would be rude to the people who are in front of you to make them wait for a project that's behind them in the queue.
No, I'm not saying
So,
that.
okay.
What I hear,
Yeah, I'm sorry. We need to, let's stick to the agenda and just be courteous to the people who are in the front of the line. So I'm sorry.
Hi, I'm Jeannie Pietrick. I'm representing, I'm going to be discussing 16, I'm just forgetting the number, 1629 to 1631 Hinman Avenue. Just a minute, let me fill this up. My project today is, it's a proposed covered porch, allows our clients to safely access and enjoy the existing flat roof through the existing historical French doors. We are finishing the original intention. The units below them with the same floor plan have a covered porch. We are proposing to use similar materials and proportions to accomplish an aesthetically pleasing addition. The existing condo building that is on Hinman has currently has a 2-story covered porch. And the third floor units have French doors, but they do not.
Here's the, show your, you want to show your presentation
yeah,
visually?
Sorry. That's the property. Oh, these are not, okay. Is there a pointer? Oh, this is a pointer. So this is existing elevation where we have 2 French doors. These are 2 different separate units. So each of these units have a French door, but neither one of them are able to access this safely. So I've been hired by my clients who live in this unit to look at the possibility of a covered porch. One of the reasons why they want it covered is obviously a railing for safety, and then the covered to protect from weather conditions as well as even sun. It's, high up, about approximately 30 feet above grade, and it faces the west winter or weather that's always coming through. So what we have proposed is a flat roof covered porch with railings to match existing railings and spindles. The columns would also match, the base and the capital would match existing. Obviously, this would only be a 1-story column. Also, this flat roof that's existing, we would be matching that detail on this flat roof. We held it slightly lower than the existing brick structure to emphasize that they are 2 separate entities, not to engage them too much. If you look at the previous elevation, so this is existing conditions with cut through the existing main building. And so we're proposing an open air porch very similar to the one below, with the units that are matching. This 3rd-story covered porch also has the engaged columns that match the ones below. If I continue on, this is a rendering. Please disregard that. I just realized this glitch that happened in the rendering. That should not be there. But these are the 2 French doors that would go out to the balcony, very similar to the unit below. This perspective kind of gives you that realizing the difference between the two structures from the masonry and the open air all wood structure. And then this is a street view, what people would see as they walked by. And as you can see, the proportions of this building to its adjacent buildings next to it certainly don't overwhelm these two units. And this is existing condition. Any questions?
I have a couple of questions specific to the standards, and the one in particular that I have some concerns with about this one, because these porches, the way they are on the building, are really are and have been an important feature of the building and are called out in the statement of significance. And Standard 12 talks about original qualities specific to existing structures and indicating that the distinguishing original qualities or characters of a property site should be preserved. And I really, my sense is, and particularly with the addition of this big porch on top of what's kind of a very elegant two-story porch, I just don't feel that that really enhances the original qualities of the street-facing facade. I think part of the issue that I have is it looks like the second level porch was repeated, just bigger on top of the second floor. And I just think it really causes the proportions to be out of sync, particularly for a facade like this one. And I had one other thing, but I'm forgetting what that is right now.
When we come back, if there are not questions, we can defer discussion for a moment. Why don't you be seated, and then we'll see if there's.
Oh, okay.
Thank you for the presentation.
Can I just add one more comment? I just realized
Sure.
I didn't really. I mean, one of the things that I noticed immediately when I started this project was that we have two French doors, but it almost looks like the project was unfinished because there's no railing or any kind of protective guard there. They would, they are operable. Why would they should have been, French or double hung windows if they weren't going to be used as an idea for access. So that was another point I wanted to make.
The roof of this current second-story porch isn't usable in any way?
It's flat. You can go out there, but it's clearly scary.
Protected,
I mean, I
yeah.
had a hard time even dimensioning without getting a little nervous.
Yeah, a railing at least.
And it's appropriate height. It's not an awkward step down or anything. It's approximately less than 12 inches. And if you did a build-up deck, you would have a standard step down.
Okay, thank you. Were there any members of the public who wish to speak to this project? Do you want to come up to the lectern? And have you signed in?
I did.
Okay, and could you please introduce yourself?
I'm Diane Rasmussen. I live at this address. And I had found a newspaper article from 1904, which is the year the building was built, and it showed an architectural rendering of the facade of the building. It is clear that there are two sets of French doors on the third floor, so this was intended as an outdoor porch, but the original design simply had a railing that goes across. And I do have a printout of that if you'd like me to leave it with you or email it later.
Yes, please.
Would you like the printout now?
Sure.
Okay.
Thank you. That's it. Is that,
Yeah, so my personal preference at this point in time, and I'm keeping an open mind, learning more about the process and how things work, listening to what your commission might have to say, but at this point in time, my personal preference would be to restore it as originally designed,
okay.
allowing the owners on the third floor to access the porch, to have the railing. It would not have a roof on it. And I do have also some questions about structural integrity. Should the project be approved and later be constructed, I would just be curious to understand, how much weight is there, and would it compromise the integrity of the existing porch to put additional weight on top of it? The existing porch on the first floor, the columns sit on limestone foundations. They have no cracks in them at this time. I don't know if additional weight would put the limestone under additional stress, or if there might be any other unintended consequences of simply putting more weight on top of a structure.
Okay, thank you. Were there any other members of the public who wish to speak to this project? A discussion by the members of the commission?
So I just wanted, I do think it's always important when you have a landmark to go back to the statement of significance and and read why it's significant. And so when you make an alteration to that, it's a big deal, especially because it's a front facade of a landmark building. So that's just information that comes before us, and I think this is one of those. So it does describe those historic features as it describes the heavy cornice below the roof line. And with this design, and not only does the massing of this front porch, which is really now 3 stories, it destroys the massing of the whole building, because now you don't even read it like it's an entryway porch, but it's another large mass in between 2 bays. But also it breaks this cornice, and I'm sure that intersection is going to be really hard to figure out. So I do think it's important for everyone to just review, if they do have a landmark house and they're coming before preservation, it's helpful to read these. You can get them online, and just understand what is significant about the building.
Other comments that?
Yeah, I really agree with Julie. I think when it was landmarked, they were very clear that the strong horizontal cornice was a key distinctive feature, and that's really obscured by this porch roof that's proposed. And also they were commenting on how the kind of smaller massing of the porch gives it a nice kind of balance and proportion to the original design, and that's really disrupted by this proposal. Certainly, it was intended to be a walkout deck. They have the French doors, and they had the railings that have vanished in years past, so I think there's something to be said for restoring the original railings and having it be an open-air porch, but I don't see how the second floor or the third floor roof and columns would really be compatible with the design.
My only comment is, if you look at the first floor height of the porch and then it gets shorter on the second floor, I don't necessarily think that identical height third floor porch on top of the second floor porch is what it would have been. So it kind of it does say that the building has good integrity, and I think this kind of would take it away.
Okay, is there any other discussion? Does anybody like to make a motion? One way or the other?
Is there a consideration to come back? I'm sorry, is there a consideration to come back with a revised proposal application for the railing instead of the porch?
I can discuss it with my clients.
Is that something we would consider come back to discuss?
Frankly, is there not an obligation to house that thing in?
Sorry.
Walk out onto the open air veranda at the moment. It's dangerous.
No, it definitely needs some kind of protection to not have people fall off the roof.
Yeah,
I
and
guess
you-
the question is it handled as something we would table and put this, defer it to another meeting, or is it a whole new application?
Scott, does it have to be an application, a new application?
I think if the applicant was willing to entertain a revised design, that could be something to be continued. If the applicant does not, then it could be voted on as is.
Would we consider continuing this so that the applicant you can discuss with your client? And
Yes, we would be happy to do that.
would you like me to do a motion for that?
Please.
Okay. I move that we continue 1629 to 1631 Hinman Avenue to the June 11th meeting.
I second.
And second, all in favor? Aye. Everyone in favor? Okay. Thank you. The next project is 825 Rosalind Place, Stephen Goldstein applicant.
Good evening. My name is Stephen Goldstein. I'm the architect on the project for 825 Rosalind Terrace. It's actually Rosalind Terrace. And the aspects of the project are in the back, the rear of the house, and in the rear of the house, and then the side of the house. The one part of the project on the second floor is to change out an existing single window. That's there's a remodeled window in the past. It's not original to the house. It's this one right here. It's a wood double-hung window. To change it out to these three casement windows, wood casement windows, which match the existing windows in the back of the house. These are casement windows that are original to the house. So this would be one area of the project, and then the other area of the project is to change this porch type enclosed porch room that's was actually just built on a deck, and existing slider glass doors to enclose that to match the original stucco and trim siding, and then also wood casement windows to be more in line with some of the original casement windows.
Since we don't have a site plan, could you, you probably said this and I missed it, this is the north is the back facing away from the street?
There is a site plan. It is. It's the back and the west. But there's a site plan at the end. So that's not going to anymore. It's not forwarding, so I guess we're not going to see it. It is it's the rear, and you could see, well, you could see here that this picture, there's neighbors are to the west, and couldn't get a straight-on shot because there's a house right here. But yeah, I don't know why there's more pages. I'm not sure why. It's technical difficulty, glitch in the system.
Any other questions for the applicant? Was there anybody from the public who was here to speak about this project? Thank you. Does anybody wish to make a motion?
Well, I'd just like to say something. So this, again, is, I'm not making a motion, I'm just saying. This, again, we just have all these landmarks. This is another landmark. So I would suggest that when you look at the front facade, that the 3 windows that would be added. There's an existing window, and it's centered on this little balcony, and when you do this other patterning, it shifts the whole thing off center, which is, I guess, curious to me. And then, do you see that? Yeah. And then the other thing is that I guess that it seems that this front facade, that this entryway, was that a enclosed porch?
It was, that enclosed porch is not original to the building. It was just an exterior porch, and somewhere along the line, they enclosed it. It's sitting on a deck foundation,
So it is,
and it's the rear west facade. These are not, I don't have a picture of the front
okay, I don't know, I'm just looking, see that?
of the house.
Could you go back to the front facade? So we can, okay, thank you.
Yeah, so that entry was probably it was an open porch, we think, or?
This was an open porch.
Yeah.
This is the rear of the
So-
house.
This is the rear.
This is the rear of the
The
house.
rear, so it's I'm just saying, as the landmark in the documentation, it shows the rear, I think, which is weird.
I haven't seen that.
Doesn't work. Oh, I see. Got it, okay, sorry, I see.
Is there other discussion? I'm sorry.
I don't know. Okay, I think I have the front.
I have the site plan here to give you some.
So just to clarify, there's no alterations to the front facade
There are not that I'm aware of.
that you're proposing?
No, nothing to the front.
Okay.
No.
Okay.
All right. Any other discussion? Would anybody like to make a motion? Carl?
So I move that we issue a certificate of appropriateness for alteration standards 1 through 7, 9, and 10
And I guess
for 825 Roslyn Place.
it looks like it has to be for demolition.
Oh.
1 and 6, I guess, for the removal. of the
And
windows.
demolition 1 through 6.
Sure. A second?
I second.
Stephen, too. All in favor signify by saying aye.
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 All opposed? Opposed. Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, so 2865 Sheridan was withdrawn by applicant. The next project is 822 Colfax, Thomas Ailman applicant.
Hi, my name is Thomas Allman. I'm the owner of Studio Tower Architecture and the architect for the project. Let's see. So the project is not a landmark building. It's in a historic district. And the modifications contemplated by this proposal include a deck in the back. So I'll just go through the drawings. It'll be easy that way. So these are axonometrics of the existing building. It's a brick foundation with stucco and shake dormers. You can see there's an existing dormer on the north, on the left, and then on the west. Let's see. Okay. So the project includes adding a dormer on the east, which is the larger dormer, to accommodate a bed, and a dormer on the south to accommodate a bathroom. And there you can see the east dormer on the front elevation. The materials match the existing building, so there's an asphalt shingled roof, painted cedar shake siding, and painted wood trim and painted beadboard soffits. Currently, the west dormer has, I think it's a piece of plywood that's blocking in the opening that's not occupied by a wall unit, air conditioner, and we propose removing that and replacing it with a casement window and a storm window to match the existing. And you can see the dormer on the back for the bathroom. Same materials that I mentioned before. Here you can see the rear elevation. There's a one-story rear entrance. The modifications that you can see here include the dormer, the windows, replacing the double-hung window in the master bedroom on the right with very narrow French doors out to a small balcony that's 3 feet deep, and replacing the double-hung window in the dining room below it with patio doors and a deck out from that. The photos, I'm going to go to the photos. I know fences and vegetation aren't supposed to be considered in terms of visibility, but there are two very old, large trees, which you can see, if I can figure out how to operate the pointer. Probably not going to happen. There we go. So this is the north elevation, the front, and there's two large trees right here. So from directly across the street, you could see the dormer, the larger dormer that accommodates the bedroom, or the bed, rather. And here you can see the existing dormer for the stair, where we're going to take out hope to take out the air conditioning unit so that it matches the existing window next to it.
Okay. Yeah. All right. I'll try to do this more logically this time. So first, we'll have questions for the applicant. Then we'll ask if any members of the public wish to speak, and then we'll come back to discussion by the commission. So first, are there any questions for the applicant on the details of the presentation? No? Okay. Why don't you have a seat? We'll continue the hearing. Are there any members of the public who wish to speak about this project? Yes.
Good evening. My name is Claire Kelly, and I live directly across the street at 823, and I'm speaking to support this project. I've lived on this block for over 50 years in 3 different houses, and I've seen some, and I'm a very, I feel very, I'm very supportive of our historic district. I'm very grateful that we have a historic district, and I can say I've been over the plans with my neighbors, and the one dormer on the side, there is a chimney in front of it in addition that, so it's really barely visible, the new dormer that would be put on the side. So I've seen, additions on the block that don't exactly meld or feel to me like they meld that well with the historic district, but this particular one seems, this work seems like it really will actually enhance the house. And so I see it all the time. I live directly across the street. Thank you.
Thank you. All right, is there any discussion by the members of the commission? No? Okay, would anybody like to make a motion, please? Robert?
I move that we issue a certificate of appropriateness for 826 Colfax to add a side dormer, rear dormer, changing of the rear elevation bedroom window to French door with a balcony, and constructing a deck off the back of the house, removing the AC from the west dormer window and a new wood casement window matching the adjacent window in its place. These are applicable standards for construction 1 through 8, 10 through 13, 14, and 15.
Second?
Second.
Ken, second. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Okay, it was unanimous. Okay, thank you. Next project is a subdivision for 1211 and 1217 Ridge. And I guess we have, we don't do that many subdivisions, but I think everybody perhaps has the white page with the subdivision standards on it.
Just extra.
And please
Hi there.
introduce yourself and proceed.
My name's Kirsten Coleman. My husband, Patrick Coleman, and I are the homeowners of 1217 and 1211 Ridge Avenue. We currently live in the large Myron Hunt home on the 1217 block. It is on a 120 by 160 lot currently, and our plan is to subdivide this lot into 2 compliant lots. That does result in a 75 or just under 75-foot frontage for the 1217 lot, and then a 45-foot 0.78 for the neighboring lot. You can see, let me see if we have our current. Currently, where the lot line is positioned, it does cause an encroachment. The large house actually extends and crosses the lot line. So we are hoping to relocate that lot line so that the house may remain. And we were advised when submitting this application that we also provide documents to show kind of our future plan of what we see the vision of these 2 lots, how them relating. We do intend for this home to be my family's forever home. So we are particularly sensitive to what is going to be built next door. My husband is a developer. I'm a designer. We will be taking on this project ourselves. And we have provided kind of a preliminary plan and drawings for what we envision and basically what we would like to look onto from our home. Let's see. And this document here, when we did the initial zoning, we did run into a small overage in the hardscape allowance. So making this small revision of removing the walkway puts that back in compliance. There was a letter addressing that. This is the topographical survey. This shows kind of the proportions on this block of Ridge Avenue. You can see that the proposed home does fit the proportions of the blocks. The lot is over the 7,200 square foot minimum area requirement. We do also intend to keep the circular drive in place and are hoping that our neighbors, our future neighbors, and us can share that. It's really a nice thing to have on Ridge Avenue just for safety and entering and exiting. These are the proposed lots. Again, we have here, these are the properties on this strip of Ridge Avenue. And then here we have the preliminary drawings of the home we intend to build in the future should this subdivision be approved and the building permits be approved further down the road. These are just design details that we'd like to incorporate. We did spend quite a bit of time driving around the neighborhood, and we're very specific about the look we are going for this home. We're looking to kind of keep the historic feel of Ridge Avenue and go with kind of a French cottage, English cottage look for the new home. And this was just these are 2 example homes we found that kind of supported the vision for the project. This latter photo is a more modern interpretation, but it does show one of the key features, which are those the beld, the swooping out of the bump out portions and the belled eaves and the eyebrow roof. Let's see. And then just this shows the property as it currently exists, and then this shows the white house would be the proposed home for future. So yes, we, are in the beginning phases of this, so we're eager to hear the response and start the discussion.
Okay, and just for clarity, today, we're, as I'm sure you know, but for everybody on the commission, so the only decision we're making is to approve the re-subdivision, not to approve the proposed new
Of
home.
course, yes.
The submission of that was helpful, and I think that's to meet a requirement in the ordinance that you disclose any proposed structure. And then I think there's an existing coach house.
There
on
is
the
a coach
back
house.
That, my understanding is any demolition of that would be, I assume, also subject to a future submission to the ordinance.
Correct, exactly.
Okay.
And-
All right.
and, Mr. Chairman, just to clarify, the review of the Preservation Commission on the subdivisions advisory to City Council, and City Council has the final authority.
Thank you. Okay, so again, to try to divide up logically, are there simply questions for the applicant about the presentation? No. Okay, why don't you have a seat then?
Okay,
Thank you.
Thank you.
Were there any members of the public who are here to speak on this matter? Thanks. Any discussion from the commission? I would just say I went and walked by up and down the blocks, and there's a lot of variety of sizes of lots, and I mean, ideally you'd have a few more feet for the lot, but clearly there were other houses even on the same block that probably had narrower lots than. I think there was one house that had the corner that had a narrower lot than this, and it didn't really seem out of character to me looking at a block of what you're trying to do. Any discussion? Would anybody like to make a motion?
So I'm just looking online. So all of the trees that you're taking down, they're on that lot, right? That you're going to be building on?
So are you looking at a current image, or would it perhaps be a slightly older?
I don't know. It's on Google Earth.
So we did have a glorious elm tree that just spread above the house. You couldn't get your arms around it. It was diseased, and the branches were lowering and lowering, so we did have to have that tree removed, unfortunately. I also included in the plan the kind of rough landscape proposal. I'm not sure if you see that as part of your packet. And it does show, it's a very rough drawing, pardon me, done by myself, but we do really want to keep trees. We have a lot of landscaping plans. And what is currently on that portion of the lot are a lot of scrub oaks. There are not really substantial, healthy trees on that portion of the lot. We sadly have lost a lot of them. There were primarily elms on the lot, and they're not doing well. So we hope to replant. I believe I do have an extra copy of the landscape, if you would like to see that. The landscape plan? Okay.
This also shows what you might not see. We did plant this large 14 trees that grew just maybe a little of Ridge Avenue. We have young children, so we are hoping to plant more densely in the front.
Do you want to just pass it down?
Did you want to see it? Maybe
Any other questions or discussion?
No.
Okay. Would anybody like to make a motion, please? Susie, do you want? Yes, I'm sorry, it's
Favorable recommendation.
right, to recommend to City Council approval of the subdivision.
I'd like to make a favorable recommendation to City Council for 1211 and 1217 Ridge Avenue subdivision. Applicable standards are the ordinance 29018 and section 2812B, 1A through E, and 2.
A second?
Second.
Robert, second. All in favor? Aye?
Aye.
None, all in favor. Thank you.
Okay.
The last order of new business, 2390 Orrington Avenue, Joseph Ballesteri, applicant.
Copies of these plans, or just use the digital ones? The ones that-
The interior plans, or, I'm sorry,
The exterior plans?
They were
Also
added to
bring
the
extra
packet.
physical copies.
does anybody,
I don't think we need the physical, we'd have to give them back.
yeah. Yeah, I mean, if you want to take us through the presentation.
Sure.
That'd be great.
So this is the plan for 2390 Orrington. This proposed two-story, 5 bedrooms, single-family home attached garage. This is the elevation. So we're using cedar siding, brick, clad wood windows, the brick chimney, aluminum gutters, and then wood soffits and wood trim as well. This is your southwest, northwest, southeast, and northeast elevation. This is how it would look sitting on Orrington from the intersection of Orrington and Lincoln.
So the street here is Lincoln?
This is Orrington going that way, and then Lincoln going that way.
Okay.
This is the Lincoln side of it. This is the Orrington side of it. Do we want to go through the tree part of it, or?
Sure.
Okay. So we were asked by the arborist to have a third-party arborist come out and give their professional recommendation. This was what they found on investigating this, was that the root systems on both those trees most likely extend all the way to the old Kendall College foundation, which is really on the other side of the site right before, let me go back here, right about there. So, and that he did that by looking at the canopies of the trees. With that being said, his recommendation in order to save the one tree was to cut down the one oak, not root it, cut it by just cutting it down, and then installing protective fencing around it, pruning the roots along the one tree, and giving it something called Camostat growth regulator, which helps it strengthen the roots and really stops it from building up and strengthens the root system. Fertilizing before construction, after construction, and performing a systematic soil drench to protect secondary invaders like two-lined chestnut borer. And then obviously pruning the dead hazardous trims on both trees. So the one tree closest to, I guess that'd be west, or I'm sorry, south, has about 15% of the limbs are dead on it that they recommend to trim on that. So, let's see. You want me to go through the zoning analysis?
That's it.
You want me to go back to something?
No, I mean, if you're done with the presentation, you are done with the presentation?
Yeah.
Okay.
Sorry.
So,
It says
okay,
he's
we'll
taking down one
do this
tree.
again in the order of questions from the commission, public comment, and then discussion by the commission. So I guess first, do we have questions for the applicant on the presentation?
So the tree closest to the house to the west on Lincoln, that one stays. Then the corner tree stays, but the two in the middle go, right?
No, just the one closest to the house. So let me go back here.
Is this accurate, this rendering? It has the trees in it, but I don't know.
Yeah, so it's got the one tree in there. That's
Look on the plan.
That's
It's
the
a
one
plan.
tree right there. There's another one right behind on the other side that is kind of leaning that way.
That one? Sorry, I'm looking at that
Let
one.
me show you.
It's number 8.
It's this one.
Picture number.
This one I showed you.
Oh, gotcha. Okay. So of the 4, the one that's like in the middle of the lot goes, right?
Correct.
Okay.
And so, what we were able to do is actually contract out with one of the largest nurseries out there. They only specialize in dealing with big trees. They were able to find for us three oaks that were between 7 and 8 inches, really as big as you can get. And they transplant these and they plant them for you, and they also warranty them for a year. So we're able to get 3 of those, and then we also talked with the arborist about sprucing up the community with some different species. He said he opted for a variety of different trees. That he gave me a list of ones that he recommended. So we're going to plant more than 125% more of the caliper of the trees to spruce up the community and make up for that tree.
Can you review the materials that you mentioned for the house again?
Sure. Yeah, it's brick siding and then cedar siding. We're doing the Anderson E-Series aluminum clad windows, which are the top wood windows they sell. We're doing wood trim, fir ply soffits, aluminum gutters, and then it's going to have an uncovered porch on it.
Do you have samples of those materials available? The reason that I'm asking is this is, a very important corner as part of this development. And a number of years ago, when we looked at the corner of Lincoln and Sherman, the materials were obviously an issue because that's such an important corner. And from my perspective, I would like to see what those are. I don't know if other commissioners have the same feeling, but if you had samples of those, do you have any with you, or?
I wasn't able to get any. Last time I met with them, they asked if I could maybe get some, but it's brick and cedar is really.
Okay.
I mean, I'm happy to drop some off, but it's pretty. This is standard cedar, standard brick size.
Okay. Thank you.
Yep.
Just other questions before the applicant's seated? No? Okay, thank you. All right, so now we will give the public an opportunity to speak. I guess I'd ask a couple things. One is, I don't want to, for some of these presentations, we set like strict 2-minute time limits and hold up cards, and I'd rather not do that. But I would ask that everyone keep their talks to a reasonable length, and if basically you're with somebody, you're going to say the same thing, perhaps just one of you could speak. Secondly, in terms of the good question that was asked about references in the ordinance and whether perhaps there was some arguments based on the ordinance that the tree should be taken into consideration. Certainly, anything you wish to say about compliance or non-compliance with the language of the ordinance is welcome. It's obviously not crystal clear. We appreciate that. We do ask that you recognize that our powers and authority is limited, but to the extent you wish to speak to how the ordinance applies, please feel free to. So would somebody like to go ahead, please? And if everyone who comes up could sign in if you haven't, and then introduce yourself.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I'm Judy Fisk. I'm First Ward Alderman. I'm also one of the authors of the Northeast Evanston Historic District. We spent 3 years writing the district nomination, almost, 20 years ago now, and I'm extremely proud of the effort. You may know that there are over 1,000 structures in the district. Again, it took us 3 years to do it. It's not only listed in the National Register, but part of the district is a local Evanston Historic District as well. So when the plan for subdivision of the Kendall College property came to the Preservation Commission, one of the standards that you were asked to review in approving the plat of subdivision was Section 2-8-12B D, which is preserve and protect the critical features of the streetscape associated with a landmark or area, property, structure, site, or object in the district. That includes the trees. So when you approve that and you approve the standards, it came forward to the council. The council approved it as well based on the standards. As you know, when something comes to council, we approve it based on the same standards that you use as well. So I'm going to take issue with whoever gave you the information that perhaps trees were not relevant to this discussion. They are entirely relevant to this discussion. You may know, maybe some of you don't remember or maybe haven't had the experience of writing a landmark nomination, but when you look at creating a historic district, the streetscape, the critical features, the landscaping, not only setbacks, not only the architecture, but the whole feeling and character of the district are taken into consideration. We're just not looking at buildings stuck on the land. We're looking at the entire character of the historic district. So it's entirely appropriate that the standard is not only in our ordinance, but that you followed it and that the city council relied on your review of that when it approved the plat of subdivision as well. The other question that I have, and we've had some discussion, and I will say that I'm speaking in front of you tonight because you're the ultimate authority on whether or not this property, this application is approved or not. It only comes to council on appeal should you deny. So on that basis, I've decided to speak to you about this tonight. But the other part of this is the question about how you define landscape masses. I mean, to me, a landscape mass includes a tree. I don't know what else you're talking about, maybe mounds of flowers or a bush, but it obviously includes trees as well. So I'm going to take issue with whoever gave you the position that trees are not an appropriate item for you to be looking at tonight, because they clearly are. And you clearly made this decision based on the standards when you approve the plat of subdivision. I know most of you probably weren't here at that time, so you can maybe pass that responsibility off to somebody else, but the fact is that was an action taken by the Preservation Commission. And I'm going to ask that you respect that and that you consider these trees. They're 200, at the very least 200, 230, and in some cases 300 years old. They predate Evanston. They're important to the streetscape, important to our climate, important to our health, important to the joy of living in this area. Not only is that the case, but on the council, you may know we hear about trees all over town all the time. People have personal relationship with the trees in their neighborhoods. They respect them as another living entity that we share our town with. So please go back and review this. Take your time. If you need to get another opinion, get another opinion. But that's my read of it, and I was there, and I was responsible for it. And if there's an expert on this that is not on the commission, it's me. So I hope you'll do the right thing and consider these trees. There's no way that one of those trees that's in the group of two is going to come down and that the other one won't be affected. So you're going to be basically taking out 2 of the 4 oak trees that are there. You may remember that we stopped the alley short of the biggest oak tree, and now we've got these other 3 that we want to protect as well. It's extremely important site. It's an extremely important corner. You see the lighthouse from this corner all across Longfield. You can see this from blocks away. This corner stands out, and it's incredibly important to the historic district. So please take some time to think about that. I'm here if you have any questions. Good luck and thank you for the work that you do. I appreciate it.
Thank you.
Hello, I'm Nancy Brott. I recently moved here to Evanston from Lincoln Park because of the trees, so I'm passionate about the trees. And in fact, I looked at 2 houses in this development, and I found it to be too sterile. In driving past there today, that square block could be in any suburb, some dingy suburb in the western suburbs, and it's not Evanston. And as a tree keeper, I have to say I'm appalled that there's not a tree ordinance in Evanston. So I hope you'll consider those 2 trees, because I agree if one goes down, they'll both go down, and they're very, very important. Thank you.
Thank you.
Good evening. My name is Julie Dorfman. I am a co-steward of the Clark Street Beach Bird Sanctuary, a certified tree keeper, and a LEED accredited professional. Professionally, I co-owned and managed Insular Window Treatments, a local commercial window treatments company. I was also honored to participate in the Jewish Reconstructionist Congregation project to build a new synagogue at Dodge and Mulford, which was the first house of worship to ever earn LEED Platinum status through the U.S. Green Building Council. JRC's old building, also on a corner lot, had 4 large maple trees, at that time approximately 50 years old, on its property and facing west. When JRC planned its new home, plans called for these trees to be saved. Congregants were fond of them. They provided shade and a buffer from storms, and they also provided gracious natural streetscape that helped the building, which was larger than the rest of the neighborhood, was residential, and it was the only large building on our side of the street. And the large trees provided a natural streetscape that blended us into James Park across the street. While the original design included keeping these lovely trees, when the general contract was negotiated, we were told that the heavy construction equipment would have to go over the trees' roots. This would compress the soil and would kill the trees. They would have to go, and they were all chopped down. Several years later, when I took Open Lands treekeeper training, we learned that, indeed, trees on construction sites whose trunks are fenced off for their protection during construction often appear healthy when the project is complete. Unfortunately, they often fail within 3 to 5 years after construction due to damaged root damage from construction compression, lack of water, or changes in the hydro system, and other stresses. I fear that these majestic baroques, which the developer claims to plan to save, will suffer this fate as well. The 16-foot radius of protection fence noted on your packet documents, if this should go through, must be very strictly enforced for any of these trees to survive the construction process. Evanston's new Climate Action and Resilience Plan addresses maintaining native species, particularly the urban tree canopy, as essential for our community-wide plan for resilience to global climate change. The Evanston City Council has committed to this plan and to integrate it into all levels of city government. I assume that Alderman Fisk's proposal to adjust or amend the city tree ordinance has that in mind. And 200 or 230-year-old trees cannot be replaced. We all understand that these mighty oaks not only provide shade, are beautiful, absorb carbon dioxide, and help prevent flooding on neighboring properties, but they are also part of Evanston's wildlife corridor and offer food and shelter for hundreds of migratory birds that travel through our community every spring and fall.
Thank you.
I'm almost done.
Yeah.
Our community-wide status as Tree City USA was affirmed last month when Mayor Haggerty planted a new oak at Clark Street Beach and issued a proclamation on the preservation of natural areas in the city of Evanston. Birders often document seeing migrating birds near the lake one day and few the next. And then the next day they're seen a bit further inland at Perkins Woods, Canal Shores, or Ladd Arboretum. Birds can spot these giant trees from the air. The Orrington neighborhood has, since before Evanston became a city, been a key link in the Lake Michigan migratory flyway. The historic and peaceful nature of this community will be sadly diminished with fewer songs of spring birds. As Chief Seattle said, we do not inherit the earth from our ancestors, we borrow it from our children.
Thank you. Next. Thank you.
Hi, good evening, committee. I'm Camille Blackowitz. I live at 806 Colfax. I'm a neighbor. I'm going to make the one point that other people have not already made. I read the external landscapers report pretty carefully, and Niels Johnson, is it? Tree, and he made the point that in order to retain the health of the other trees, they'd have to retain the stump of the tree they tore down. And I can't imagine that anybody's going to want to buy a house with a stump in front of it instead of a nice, beautiful tree. So I would ask you to look at that carefully. I think the plan is, if the only thing you can do is accept or reject the plan, I think you have to reject this plan based on the damage it would do to the trees, and it would be an environmental crime, really, to take them down. So thanks.
Thank you. Next, sir.
Good evening. My name is Michael Wazalewski. I'm the resident at 2380 Orrington, so I'm the next door neighbor of this lot. Also, it so happens I'm the executive director for the Institute of Sustainability and Energy at Northwestern. So I really endorse what Alderman Fisk just finished telling you, because I deal with these issues day in and day out, not only locally, but on a global scale. So that when we think about these trees, it is absolutely clear that the two trees are sufficiently close together that we're going to lose both of them, and I think that's a high probability. And I think the arborist's report really made that fairly clear. I won't go into the whole speech about sustainability, because the other folks who have already spoken have been fairly eloquent in doing so. But I do want to sort of look at another practical two things. First of all, if you look at the character of the neighborhood and the character of Lincoln and that area around Orrington, really it is a beautiful area that really is a showcase for Evanston and a showcase for what the quality of life and the quality of living in Evanston has come to mean. And preserving it, I think, is important not only for our generation, but future generations as well. On a more practical level, let me just also point out one thing that hasn't been pointed out already. If you take a look, for instance, at all the houses that have been built on Orrington so far, there is a uniform setback. I'm concerned about the setback for this new proposed house and its substantial massing. And so as a consequence, occupying that corner in a way that is perhaps out of character with regard to not only the houses on Orrington, but also most of the houses on Lincoln as well. So that is also a concern. Thank you very much. Thank you.
Hi, my name is Allison Sloan. I'm the co-director of Natural Habitat Evanston, and I'm also a certified tree keeper, and I lead the second Sunday tree walks around Evanston and also lead tree walks for elementary school groups. And so one thing I often try to talk to kids about especially is that Illinois was originally, our original ecosystem was called an oak savanna. And oaks are the backbone of that ecosystem. And compared to the original number of oak trees that we had before the settlers first descended here, we're down to 17% of the oak ecosystem that we originally had. And this is so alarming that the Morton Arboretum and the Chicago Region Trees Initiative has launched its own oak ecosystem recovery plan to try to get cities and private homeowners to save the remaining oak trees that still exist. So these are remnant oaks from our original oak ecosystem here in Evanston. This is a special thing. I try to teach the kids that we have to appreciate the oaks that are still here. So I tried to look up some statistics about the one tree that's proposed to come down. If it's a 32-inch diameter bur oak, the National Tree Benefit Calculator says that it's soaking up approximately 5,248 gallons of stormwater runoff every year, and it's absorbing about 1,565 pounds of carbon dioxide. And any big shade tree lowers the heat effect, the heat index about 10 to 15 degrees underneath. And I can't think of a higher purpose for a historic preservation commission than to preserve what's left of our original oak canopy. Thank you.
Thank you.
Good evening. I'm Barbara Janes, and I'm going to get to the ordinance section 2-8-9B on landscape masses. So I'm Barbara Janes. I live at 802 Colfax, which is diagonally through the block from the lot that's under discussion. I was a member of Kendall Neighbors who worked for 3 years to facilitate a reasonable development on the Kendall property. I have looked at the meeting packet and the preservation ordinance and frankly am appalled at the mass of the house the developer wants to put on the lot, and particularly the impact that the massiveness of the proposed house, if built as proposed, will have on the century-old oak trees on the lot. Our group had endeavored to have all the oak trees protected. I don't know why that didn't happen, but for some reason it didn't. Having looked at the photographs that were submitted by the developer, an aerial view shows the block with the houses. It's this one with a lot of little pictures. Most of the block with the houses, in the upper left-hand corner of that block, you can see the canopy of beautiful trees. Trees, as people have said, are the lifeblood producing oxygen, and the developer wants to take down two of these historic oak trees. These trees go back to before Evanston was founded. It is important that they be saved. The developer's arborists, okay, I won't read that. The other picture is the one that he showed you with the house with the beautiful trees. Those trees aren't going to be there. So I think that's a little suspicious. It goes to the corner lot won't be there. It will look like an entirely different house with completely different aesthetics. And I have to agree with other people. This lot is the premier lot on that whole block. I mean, I used to think, if they kept the Kendall building, we could make condos and you could look out across Longfield to the lighthouse. But now this is an opportunity. And not least, the preservation ordinance in section 2-8-9, section B, number 9 states, walls of continuity, facades, and property and site structures such as masonry walls, fences, and landscape masses shall, not may, shall, when it is a characteristic of the area, which these certainly are, form cohesive walls of enclosures along a street to ensure the visual compatibility with the property, structures, sites, public ways, objects, and places to which such elements are visually related. That's in the ordinance. That says to me, those trees need to be saved. Thank you.
I'll try not to retread the same ground. My name is Ted Sykes, and I appreciate, Mr. Chairman, that you think you might not have the jurisdiction here. I can't imagine a preservation committee that wouldn't have jurisdiction over preserving these. And I appreciate all that Alderman Fisk said as well. These are 200 to 300-year-old trees. They are the ambience of the neighborhood. Replacing them with 7 or 8-inch trees is not going to spruce up the neighborhood. It's going to kill the ambience of the neighborhood. And I'll also agree with Michael. My wife Karen and I live at 714. Ada, who left, lives at 710. Michael lives on the corner of Orrington. What struck us about this is the mass. The mass is just way out of proportion, and we worry too about the setback. But one thing I will say about trees, and I'm not an arborist, trees fail. That is, they die when they lose 40% of their root mass. There is no way you can cut one of these. These trees have been there for 200, 300 years. All of those trees' roots are intertwined. A builder will tell you, you should never build a foundation closer than 25 foot to a tree, ideally more than 50 feet away. And you can get away with it with a coniferous tree, but not with the deciduous tree where the roots are all intertwined and run through the neighborhood. So we are strongly opposed to that. Thank you.
Was there anybody else who hasn't spoken? Yes, sir.
Richard Buchanan, I live at 723 Lincoln, just across the street from the lot. I'll be really brief. I moved here 13 years ago, and the reason why we moved to Northeast Evanston is just, again, the trees, as everybody stated. My concern is, in the 13 years I've lived there, the number of trees that we've lost through storm damage, disease, is staggering. I mean, the canopy is a lot less than it was 13 years ago, which is a real shame. I'm just saying it'll be a crying shame to lose 2 more trees if we can stop it. I mean, storms you can't help, disease you can try to stop, but willingly chopping down trees, if there's got to be a better way. And I would love to see, more development done carefully. It's great for property values, and I'm happy about that. But there's got to be a way to do it without destroying, healthy trees. Thank you.
Okay. Maybe we can divide our discussion into two parts. Let's say the first in terms of the home itself, exclusive of the trees. Does anybody wish to speak to that in the commission?
Yeah, a couple comments and thinking about how putting aside the landscape and the tree issues, but just looking at the architecture and how the standards relate to the proposed design. There's a number of things I find odd about the design as proposed. Certainly it's being proposed to maximize the bulk and the volume that zoning permits on this lot, so it's pushing everything right up to the limit in terms of volume and mass. The standards that relate to proportion of openings, proportion of windows, ratio of window area to wall area, I find to be particularly relevant. I think the street facades in particular have kind of a smorgasbord of a million different window sizes and types and proportions, and the effect of that is pretty random. It seems very chopped up and a little bit of everything. The other thing I find very odd about the design is the treatment of the front entrance on Orrington, with just an open deck and no covered porch, but then around on the Lincoln Street side having sort of what almost looks like the porch roof that should have been on the Orrington side is tacked on to the Lincoln Street side over some other windows. I think the Lincoln Street side almost reads more as the front entrance because of that porch first floor projecting roof, which I don't understand what purpose it even serves. I find that aspect of the massing to be very, very awkward. And I don't think that fits with the character of the rest of the development, where they were very traditional about providing a front entrance with a covered porch typically.
I had the same concerns in addition to questions about the materials.
Susie?
So in the past, when we've done these reviews for new construction, we've had a lot more information of the context of the neighborhood. I think it's really difficult to see. You have some photos of the Lincoln Street, and I went by the area so that you can get a sense of the environment with your own eyes, because I think that's obviously very important. But I think we really need to see more context of what's going on with the adjacent homes. We can't even really see what's going on Lincoln. Mm-hmm. You can kind of see in the distance what's going on Orrington. And I think we really need that information to find out how the standards apply with the heights and the proportions and the rhythms. I think that Ken has stated some of the key items, but I would definitely agree with you, Diane, that I think the materials would be good to see. It's a little striking in the renderings that it seems like there may be an incompatibility with the materials, but I don't want to make that judgment until we see them and we have a little bit more idea on the context of the neighborhood. So I would recommend that the applicant come back with a little bit more information on the streetscape for Lincoln and Orrington and give us some more documentation of what we're comparing this to for the compatibility. It will help us understand where you're getting your height, where you're getting your rhythm and your scale, and then we can determine whether it's actually a compatible structure within that environment.
I am going to that number 9 standard, which is fences and landscape masses, and so it's hard to not only understand the nature of the adjacent homes with this presentation, but the nature of the adjacent landscape masses. So I think all of that it's just not clear.
Well, and since Julie opened it up to the other part of this conversation, I just wanted to point out something that I found to be unique to this area is that Alderman Fisk, you had mentioned that the alley had stopped short to preserve the oak tree that's right there on Lincoln. And I think that is something that's a very unique aspect to this that doesn't often happen. It shows clear decision to preserve these trees in past motions. So I agree with you, Julie, that there is a question of the standard 9 and the standard 12, which is the walls of continuity and the original qualities. The original qualities do open it up for site or object, and its environment should be preserved. I think the fact that this neighborhood has already made very significant efforts to preserve these trees with past development, I think that does somehow say that this isn't a characteristic of this specific lot.
Carl, did you? No.
I mean, I remember Jack talking about this lot so much when we were approving all of the other houses. It's a cornerstone. So, I mean, it has, I just wonder why the arborist didn't say how old the trees were. I think that's weird that he didn't say how old the trees were, but, it's just, it has to be vetted, like, really, really well because it's such an important corner.
I think if we're going to ask the applicant to come back, I mean, Ken and Diana have raised potential issues with respect to the kind of design and mass, and I'm just not sure we've given input for the applicant to react to in that way.
Yeah, I think to put it in the terms of the standards, I think it's standard 3, proportion of openings, the relationship of width to height of the window openings. I think we've got a broad mixture, some that are individually close to square windows, some groups of close to square windows, some groups of fairly tall and narrow windows, some groups of very tall windows with transoms. It's kind of a little bit of everything without any apparent rhyme or reason to how things are distributed. So I think standard number 3 is important to look at. Standard 4, the rhythm of solids to voids. I think that corner octagonal piece needs further study. Not that it's impossible to have kind of a more open bay at a corner like that as a prominent feature, but I think that's needs some more careful consideration. That would be quite an expanse of glass compared to the rest of the neighborhood. The number 6, rhythm of entrance of porches and storefront recesses and other projections, I think is a key one. I don't see this as being compatible with that neighborhood at all in that standard. And then number 7, relationship of materials and texture, I think gets to Diane's other point. How would this particular brick and this particular cedar siding look relative to the environment? And then finally, with the landscaping is numbers 9 and 10, walls of continuity and scale. Just is this 10 pounds of house in a 5-pound bag for the lot and the important historic or important mature trees that are on the lot? Is it really appropriate to maximize the zoning footprint and build? If you're allowed to, I was looking at the zoning analysis, and basically they're allowed to build. The maximum is with the setbacks. The maximum calculates out to 2393 square feet, and the proposed is 2392 square feet. I mean, that's pushing it right up to the last inch, and so I guess I'd question that decision.
Just informationally, the city and the developer negotiated the plat of subdivision when this was done, and it does say that trees on private property will be preserved to the extent feasible. I mean, the city wasn't able to get any kind of restriction. Is that, if possible?
Yeah, just to clarify on that, there's a resolution that approved the subdivision of the property, and as part of that resolution, there's a tree preservation plan. It had 3 different denotations for trees, of existing trees to be removed, existing trees to remain, and existing on-site trees to remain if possible. So that is the latter distinction is the one that characterizes 3 of the 4 trees towards the northern and northeastern portion of the site, and the one 51-inch caliber tree that would be where the extension of the alley would go through sometime in the future if that tree were not there, is listed as an existing tree to remain.
I mean, there seem to be questions about what our authority is that are perhaps in a gray area. I was more interested in developing the arborists. I mean, the arborists seem to say that what I think everybody says is there's certainly a risk that the tree closer to Lincoln will be lost. And in your presentation, you were speaking as if it would be preserved, which obviously is a goal. I guess to me, it's a realistic goal to try to improve the protection of that tree and do everything we can to protect that tree. I don't know. I mean, listening to everybody and having a wife who's a tree keeper and being very sympathetic. I know one of the speakers said, I think what's clearly true is that for the tree that's further into the property to survive, you would need, I think he said, 20 to 40 feet. I mean, the siting of the house is such that it can't be moved anywhere. There's no more place to put it. So even if, let's say, the footprint was shrunk a little and it was moved back, it still clearly wouldn't. I mean, you'd still be talking about 10, 12 feet from the house. I mean, the chances that, what we clearly don't have the authority to do is to deprive the applicant of the right to build a house on the property. And there's, the one tree is in a position where it's I'm sorry, but we'll give you another chance to say something if you want. I think it's something that if people want to look at, I'd be in favor of allowing the developer to further develop steps to preserve the tree that's closer to the street, and then giving other people. I think one of the letters that came in asked for time to have a closer look taken at the trees and see what could be done. I'd be in favor of deferring seeing what could be done. But we can't come up with a solution which is the developer is prohibited from building a house on the property. It's been approved. It's in about the only, it could be shrunk a little, it could be moved a little. But just looking at the site, they're right against the rear setback already. There's just nothing else they can do. I'm sorry, I don't want to monopolize the commissioners have discussion.
Yeah, I do think the 2 trees in the middle are at grave risk no matter what gets built here. So I think that's just inevitable. None of us can predict what's going to happen during construction or what the health of the trees would be on the back end. I guess it's just a matter of what's the solution architecturally that's compatible with the neighborhood that at least maximizes the odds that the trees can survive.
Maybe you could return to the podium.
So one of the things I just wanted to point out, people were concerned that the construction would, kill both of those trees. That 53-inch oak at the end of the alley is less than 12 feet from the other house that we built, and obviously it's still standing. So this is, a professional arborist giving his professional opinion that, this 12-foot, 16-foot tree protection plan will preserve that tree. We could all speculate, but I think it'd be unfair for us, like you said, to, have to come back and present on a tree when, we were kind of told this was really just exterior historical review matters.
Okay. Well, I guess that there seems to be a consensus of the commission that consideration should be given to changes to the house itself. Okay. And I guess one question for you is whether you feel you have enough guidance to go back and reconsider those issues, or whether you have questions about the work you would need to do to come back that you'd like to ask so that you can go back productively and try to address issues.
So am I coming back with a plan to try to protect that, save that, both those trees?
Let's
or-
forget about the trees for a moment,
Okay.
just the structure
So
itself.
just the structural stuff, okay.
The facade of the house, the issues with respect to the entranceways and windows and
So windows,
rhythm of the facade.
entryways,
And
samples of the materials.
clarification of the drawings, that we really need to see the house in relation to the houses next to it. That photograph, it's really hard to see it, and it appears really massive. I just think everything should also be undertaken, if you can minimize that mass and move it away, at least from there's one close tree that's probably going to go, but I mean, whatever you can do. It appears massive, and it's very hard to tell from the way it's documented for us. So I think, is that clear that we need more?
Is that the Lincoln one you're talking about, this one?
Yeah, I mean, you sort of, it's on the corner, but then the adjacent houses going in the other, I can see one side, the other direction.
But you said removing the mass. Which is the mass that you're asking about?
We've seen, the commission has seen drawings of street facades with the other houses and the heights and comparing things. And I think because of the nature of this lot, we need to understand that.
One of the things to remember is we had this issue with the corner lot on the south east part of the block that came before us, I think, last year. The corner lots don't fit within the line of facades on the street. I mean, they're not in the same position, and so you can't. Like the front of this house on Lincoln has to go out further because.
Talking about alignment of facades, I'm just talking about. Thanks. It's the nature of the materials and the rendering. It's just difficult to understand its mass, at least for me, from these photographs. It just appears very massive and monolithic.
Yeah, I mean, I guess from my perspective, I just don't feel that I have enough information about it to make a decision about whether this meets the standards from my perspective. So
I would
so
agree.
think
And isn't this something Carlos could work with you? I mean, Carlos is very familiar with what other
yeah, well, and
what other
certainly he
applicants have
he
done.
knows the history, obviously, of all of the things that have been done here and have been approved here. Certainly,
In my opinion, I agree with Diana. It's just a matter of information. It's a matter of how you're pulling your heights across and just documenting that. And Carlos, I think, can provide examples of other applicants that have shown that information and that relationship. And I think it just helps us ensure that these standards are being met. So I would assume Carlos can give them a little bit more direction as well.
Okay, so I think just to list, I mean, Dan wanted to see the actual samples of the brick and cedar material if possible. We wanted to see better drawings as to the or depictions of the placement vis-a-vis like the houses. I guess particularly on Lincoln, I don't think we had depiction.
Yeah, if we can get an
And then-
elevation comparison, that would give us the height. It gives us the front facade voids to the windows and proportions. I think that's a fairly straightforward drawing.
Okay, and then I guess, I think both Ken and Diane expressed at least concern about the exterior design, which we have to see. And then on trees, to the extent, I mean, it did seem to me that the landscape architect was pretty much saying he didn't know if he could save the tree. I mean, I'm wondering, what, I mean, I don't recall that the presentation included much detail about what they would do to preserve the tree?
Yeah, so there's a plan that we actually already had passed with Evanston. It's the engineering plan. It calls for a 6-inch or 6-foot minimum protection aluminum fence, and then a silt fence on the inside. So that's what I brought copies of that.
Okay. Would it be fair for us to maybe consult with the city experts rather than making our own determination as to that? We're not equipped to assess the.
Right, so there is a tree protection ordinance that was referenced earlier that requires a tree protection plan for the construction that the applicant would be required. And if there's tree removal, there's calculations for replacement of the caliper, of these 125% of what would be replaced. So those are already ordinance restrictions that again are kind of outside the preservation authority.
Okay, so we'll at least try to get more complete information and make sure that we know where we are and what decisions the city's already made. In terms of public wanting to have input with respect to the tree plan, since, I mean, even if they came back here, we're not, I mean, we also lack kind of expertise to make decisions about, for example, what would be adequate to save the one tree. Is there anything you can recommend, or maybe you can't, that in terms of members of the public who wish to make sure that the city's taking adequate steps to protect the one tree? I mean, I don't know if that's a fair question. I'm just asking.
Yeah, and unfortunately, it's a little bit outside of my expertise as well. The Public Works Agency and our arborist regulates that portion of the ordinance, but we could certainly consult with them and get more information about what type of plan would be submitted to them for review.
Okay. I mean, I don't know, we could report to Alderman Fisk at least on the steps being taken and the person who has expertise. Because we're not, I mean, even if everybody came back here with all kinds of good data next time, both the public and the developer, I don't think any of us would be qualified to assess it or to know whether
I mean, maybe
it was accurate. Or
maybe the solution is that you ask Nels Johnson, okay, what is the appropriate setback we need from this, at least from the northernmost tree, to be highly confident that it survives the construction, and let that define the setback rather than just, okay, we have, per zoning, it's a 17-foot setback, so we're going to build right up to the 17-foot line. Maybe you have to come another 2 feet back, or whatever Nels Johnson thinks is appropriate. I'd instead of saying to the Nels Johnson, we're building this house, what can we do to save the tree? Flip it around and say, we want to save this tree, how much can we build?
I mean, there will be another hearing next month, and I'm thinking that it might. I'm sorry. We are going to continue the hearing until next month, and I'm thinking unless somebody, I mean, if you have something terribly, completely new to say, but that. I'm sorry. Could you come up and speak in the speaker then?
Are you going to follow the directions or follow the suggestions that Nils Johnson made in the letter that you commissioned him?
Correct.
So you were going to retain the stump?
Correct.
Watch.
Okay. Yeah. Again, I think we're not we simply aren't qualified to deal with the issues, and we'll report to Alderman Fisk on, what steps are being taken, an appropriate person at the city to discuss the issues with respect to the tree. I mean, I guess I would say to the applicant that, certainly everybody, I mean, there's certainly a lot of gray area about exactly where our approval, our right to approve things stops. But I'm sure, everyone it would certainly be taken into account steps that the applicant took to try to strengthen the preservation of the trees.
It takes us a lot of resources to put all this together. So I just want to make sure that, I love the suggestions. I'm happy to come back with all those changes. But if it's still trying to save both these trees, I think we're all clear, and the city of Evanston, their arborist, is clear that it's impossible to save both those trees. So at that point, it's just, it's costing us tens of thousands of dollars just to carry this lot for all these years. So we're trying to find a suitable solution by maintaining one of the trees that said keep if possible.
Okay. When will Carlos be back? Okay. All right. So I think you should continue to have a dialogue with him as to the, what should be presented, and he can contact any of us to try to get clarifications, so to try to make it as efficient as possible for you to come back. And again, we'll get back to, make sure people at the city talk to Alderman Fisk about relay information as to what steps are being taken to preserve the tree and what their assessment is, which, again, is not something we can, yes, I mean, but we have one last word from Alderman Fisk, and then we'll do a motion for continuance.
Excuse me, thanks. And I understand that this is difficult for you. I mean, it's not, you don't review plats of subdivision frequently, although you did one tonight, certainly. But there certainly is language in there that indicates that you should be thinking about the trees. And I want that to be really clarified as, the city staff is having their discussion. Thank you for including me in that. I will be happy to participate in it. But clearly, this is something that doesn't come across your desk every day, and I appreciate your willingness to hear us out on it. I have been involved from the very beginning with this, and I will say that it was the city's expectation that every step would be taken to preserve the trees, and that's reflected in the documents that were in the resolution that was finally approved. Stuff happens sometimes, storms, disease, things like that happen, but it didn't anticipate taking something down in order to build as big a house as possible. So I, again, appreciate the struggle. I'd be happy to help and going forward with this, and thank you for including me and listening and hearing.
Yep.
And my understanding is that this is former Chair Williams' last evening.
We'll have to close out.
Are we going to have cake or? Oh, good.
Okay. Could I hear a motion to continue this property until next month?
I move that we continue the application for 2390 Orrington Avenue until the June 11th. Is that June 11th, 2019 commission meeting?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Unanimous in favor. Thank you. Okay, thank you. Next, did you receive any comments in the April 9 minutes?
If not.
Okay. Did anybody have any? Would anybody like to make a motion to approve the April 9th minutes? Anybody who's here like to make a motion?
Yeah.
I move that we approve the meeting minutes from April the 9th,
I'll
2019.
I'll second. I was here, so
Okay,
I
Diane,
second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Abstentions?
So, all right, staff reports. Should we go to discussion?
Just do a brief staff report. We had the camp training on April 26th. Thank you for all who were able to attend. I think we had 9 present, so that was great attendance from the commission here, as well as joined by some of our colleagues, staff and commissions around the area. I found it very valuable, but if you have any other feedback about the training, that would be great. I can pass that along to camp. I know we have requested the PowerPoints from that they noted they would share, so we'll make sure we request those again. Preservation and Design Awards, the calls out for nominations. So we're still seeking nominations on those. Don't have a date yet for when the award ceremony will be held, but certainly be after the commission date ends. And then for design guidelines, I know Carlos indicated he'd met with Commissioner Hacker and is working with her on that. I'd be happy to facilitate any more movement on that.
Is it moving at all, or?
Okay, here's the plan. Carlos, he's at his son's graduation, but the next step was, because we did this 2 years ago, so the next step was that he was going, and he we talked, that he was going to initially put something together so we could look at it, and so it's in his court, so I would appreciate just any help to move it along, because it would be great to have it up. It's really confusing if you try to get information online. So, can I just say something about so I thought the workshop was really great, and I still want to bring this up again, which I'm just a broken record about these plans, because I just misread this building, and I didn't know what facade was facing the street, and and I think what we heard at the workshop is that they were kind of stunned that we could not see floor plans. So I don't know how is that discussion dead? We can't have that open up again? What do we do? Any help
I think the kind of interim, sort of maybe potentially middle ground solution is that the applicant can bring the plans and show the plans at the meeting.
But is this a done deal? It can never happen then because and can we understand why it happened in the first place as a commission?
Yeah, I definitely won't commit to never on any of these items. But
we understand why it happened as a commission, why it was shut down and we can't see plans?
For privacy reasons.
But but that has never, in all of these years, it's just, so I'm asking a different question. There must have been something that happened. Is there something that will help us understand this, because it makes no sense? All right.
Okay.
And I'm finished.
Okay. All right. So we're not supposed to take any votes in discussion, but I do think that we should vote Diane the best commissioner ever.
Oh, yeah.
We'll make it unanimous.
Thank you, and
Aye.
thank you. Thank you all so much. It's been a pleasure to work with all of you, and I'm going to miss you. Yeah.
Thank you so
and
much.
It's been great working with Scott and Carlos and Johanna, and in the past, Mark, Lori, and Demir. So it's been great.
I mean, sincerely, you set an incredibly high standard of.
Well, you're meeting it. So
both having analytical ability to have a good critical analysis of the project, but just being incredibly even-handed. And I strive, if I can be half as even-handed this year, it'll be amazing.
Well, thank you so much. It's been a great 6 years. But it's time to go.
That's true.
I don't know if there's any other follow-up to the, I think I had a list of follow-up items, but from the boot camp, but it's late. Maybe we can talk about specifics next month.
For anyone who wasn't there, there was really some valuable information, and also about ethics and other issues that come up. And so it would be great to, I don't know if we can just summarize some of those things for the people who weren't there. Maybe for next, I don't know. Mark, maybe we can I can add some stuff, or I just think we should do something. Actually, because there were people who weren't there that didn't hear all of that.
Okay. Well, I had made a list of kind of follow-up issues and potential future actions, and I'll refine it a little and bring it next time when maybe we'll be done a little earlier and have 15 minutes and be less tired. Any other discussion? Anything else, Scott, that we should?
That's it. Just thank you again to former Chair Williams.
Thanks, Scott.
Does somebody want to move to adjourn? Diane, you have to
Yeah,
make it.
I'll move. I'll do that. I move that we adjourn the meeting.
Second down here. Roberts wants a second.
All in favor?
All right.